my screen?
Are you not able, hold on, let me fix this. You should be able to allow, all right, I guess I'll just make you co-host. There we go. Okay, sorry, we're in the middle of the meeting. Ron has just given a report on the proceedings of DEMPED. Do you want to review any of that for the recording, Ron?
I reviewed the status of the draft zoning for neighborhood that has come out, and that the Zoning Design Development Committee is working with right now. Okay, so DEMPED notified the ANC just a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday, that in preparing for the RFP for the Civic Center site, they did a title search, which is sort of standard procedure, I guess. And what they discovered in that title search is that in the deed, there from when the Chevy Chase Land Company gave the Civic Core site to the city for school, it put certain deed restrictions on the land it was giving or selling, however it transferred. There may be gaps, by the way, in what I'm saying here, because there's not a lot of information out there. I don't think I'm filling in between the lines too much, because it's not all that, the problem is not all that complicated. The solution, though, maybe. So when they gave this land, there are two parcels. One is the one I'm indicating here in the front on Connecticut Avenue. And the other is this section back here behind it. And that section comes with a 1909 restriction that says no structure can be erected within 15 feet of the street. It then says no stable shall be erected except at the rear of the premises. And it also says that no apartment house or apartment houses shall be erected thereon. The immediate impact from DEMPED's point of view is that when they issue the RFP, it will say that you cannot put any housing, any apartment housing, on this section at the rear of the site. Again, this is Connecticut Avenue out here at the front. This is the rear of the site, which is largely where the parking lot is, and where part of the community center and the library and the ball fields and stuff are the playgrounds and stuff. Let's go to this others. So I looked at this, and this is just my own playing around. I took, this is the Civic Center site right here. I took the Garfield apartment building.
Hey, Ron, I think if
Yes.
you meant to advance to a different image, we're still seeing the first thing you showed.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My bad. Hold on. I may have to stop and start again. Are you now seeing
Yeah, there we go.
this plan? So this is Civic Center site here. I took the Garfield at the same scale, which is at the corner of Legation and Connecticut, and I dumped it in the front, in the portion where you could allow an apartment building. And that leaves this amount of space here for the community center and library. What this shows is that if you built a relatively tallish building on Connecticut Avenue, the remaining site in the back, the one with the restriction, could probably fit community center and library, but it would all be very tight. The open space would suffer, and the only way probably to get the amount of housing, a significant amount of housing on the site, would be to go up probably higher than people would like at that location. Plus, it would diminish the opportunities for having a sort of civic presence on Connecticut Avenue. It would be more of basically an apartment building there.
That also sounds like there wouldn't be any parking either, right?
Well, parking's going to be underground no matter what.
Ron, can I ask a question?
Please do.
Okay, I don't know anything about the nature of a deed. And this was a 1909 thing. How long does that remain in place? Perpetuity? Does that ever get, is there a change that's ever allowed to be made?
That is a excellent question, and one that I want to get this thing up here again.
I just know that it looked like from the email that came out, the post from Robert Gordon, president of the Chevy Chase Citizens Association. Mm-hmm. He seemed to indicate that it was he who was thinking about the Civic Core site, and that he went down to the archives and did research. And that, he really had somebody do a lot of searching. Was it actually DEMPED that notified us, or did he notify DEMPED?
I saw the thing that Robert had posted. Can you guys see the, what are you looking at now? I can't tell what you...
The first thing you showed us.
The deed.
Okay. The deed. So the first I heard about it was when Peter sent out an email, and later in the day or the next day, I saw the thing Robert posted. I honestly, Robert didn't post this drawing, this, he posted something similar to it. So I don't know.
I'm just curious to know if if the whole discovery of this came from Robert Gordon.
The way Peter framed it, and I've had an individual conversation with Peter on this, so I'm not sure if I remember if he posted this or if he told me this, but it was my understanding from him that it came when DEMPED did a title search. Peter independently, I think, was visited in the middle of the night, if I remember his post. Robert Gordon was visited in the middle of the night by the ghost of Newlands.
Yes, acting on a hunch, he said.
Who filled him in on this.
The ghost of Newlands.
So again, to me, the importance for this committee is to talk about, this is the kind of deed restriction that followed or was used instead of overtly racist covenants and restrictions. This was designed to be exclusive. There's none of this maintain the character of the neighborhood because there was no neighborhood. It wasn't to solve a parking problem because cars hadn't been invented yet. This was about who lives in the neighborhood. And what this deed restriction says is that people who live on the block to the right, to the east here, do not want to live next to either horse manure or apartment dwellers. It's about who can live in the neighborhood. So it's really the sort of thing that honestly, the best thing I think we could do as a community is figure out how to get rid of it. And
So hang on.
hold on a minute, because this goes to Libby's question also. And honestly, I have no idea. I spent a little bit of time Googling. I can't figure out how you remove a deed restriction. Ellen McCarthy, who knows about this stuff, same thing. And so a question has gone out just from Ellen to some people she knows in zoning attorneys at one firm. Peter Goslin, through one of the committee members on the zoning design committee, is trying to ask the zoning lawyers at another firm, and hopefully we'll get some sort of answer. And the last thing I would add before I shut up is that, for what it's worth, that Peter, I talked to Peter today. He called me, and we talked about this, and he is, we're pretty much of one opinion on this, that it'd be really bad optics at a minimum for this community to use this old, exclusionary, racist provision to impact this process at all. And the process needs to go forward. And if it doesn't go down the way the community wants, or OP wants, or DemPeb wants, or whatever, it'll go forward on its own merits, and not because of Senator Newland's deed restriction from 112 years ago. And thank you, Carl, for correcting my math on that in that earlier email. So anyway.
Hi, so this is Corinthia.
Corinthia has her hand up, and I'd like to hear from her. Yeah.
Hi, so I guess my one question is, or I'm just wondering how to get around this. When I had property in Northeast, my property also had in the deed restriction that Blacks and Jews couldn't own the property. However, I had purchased the property. So I'm just wondering, I guess the question is, are these deed restrictions still enforceable? And then my second thing is, I do agree that we need to put out a statement or something about this, because the excitement of like, we found this deed restriction and we can't do it, it makes me feel that it's intended to, please get off of me. It's intended to still be, it's kind of like what's the analogy about the crying wolf? Like, I got you. Like, I can't explicitly say I don't want certain people in my neighborhood, but this deed restriction is a valid way to say it without saying it. And that's what it feels. And when I see that posted on the listserv and written, that's what it makes me feel like. And I agree with Ron when he said we should have some type of statement, or we should say something about, we are trying to get past our history of being exclusive or whatnot. So that's all I wanted to know. I'm just curious how to get around the deed, because I know various properties have that already in their deeds about certain people can't own property, and they still buy it.
Just as a matter of fact, there, and Carl, if you know, you can correct me, but I think I have this right. The district recently actually passed a law so that they made it super easy to get rid of the covenants that were explicitly race-based. The ones with no Jews and no Blacks and all that. Those are you can get rid of or ignore by DC law. This one, because it's not explicit, we think probably is more problematic. But again, nobody's been able to figure out the process yet, so we don't really know what that means, how problematic.
So I want to make a couple of comments. One is, thank you, Corinthia. I mean, I think you expressed my sentiments exactly. And no one in this neighborhood is actually going to stand up and do anything that overtly could be seen as racist. So they use mechanisms like this to be able to get around it. That's how this neighborhood operates, and probably has for eons. So one question I have is has anybody actually seen this deed? Because what you're showing us is not a deed, and what was posted on the listserv is not a deed. I'd like to see the actual deed myself, and I imagine others might too, because it's so far we're hearing about this deed, but we haven't actually seen it. So that's my first comment. I'll hold off on the second one.
That's an excellent observation, Cal. And actually, I was just talking like an hour ago to Ellen McCarthy, and she was saying the same thing, because often deeds have lots of stuff in them, and that is important, and ranging from who is the beneficiary of the restriction. Is it the district? Is it the lot owners and the neighbors or whatever? That there's some provision, could be a provision like that, and there could be some time limitation on it. It's unclear. So, and I haven't seen anything other than this and the one other drawing that Robert Gordon had in his piece.
So thank you. My second point is that third item, no apartment house or apartment houses shall be created therein. The reason that was intended is this was always intended to be a single family dwelling unit place with no commercial anything. Remember, that was the original plan here. And that's the way Newland set it up, so that it would be whites only. So this apartment building thing was definitely part of that. I mean, it doesn't say it in the lease, but I think we could make a good case for that.
I don't know enough of the history. Maybe Carl, you do, but there are apartment buildings up and down Connecticut Avenue. The lack of taller buildings along our stretch is actually the outlier, but I don't know enough about the history of putting that zoning in place. I think there was always from the get-go some sort of non-residential component in this area to serve the residences, but don't know for a fact.
Carl?
Yeah, thanks. Two observations. One of them, it is a little bit more complicated. First, because from the very beginning, there was an apartment house, of course, and that's the Chevy Chase house on Chevy Chase Circle itself. So that was a part of the original development and sanctioned by Newlands. So that was a Newlands thing. It's useful to keep that in mind. I think, although I can't say for sure, that the thinking at the time was ultimately that there should be some commercial. There were those at the very beginning back in 1907 and moving forward from then that didn't want any commercial at all, but commercial went in on the west, and commercial only went in on the east side of the street much later, in fact. And the deed for the school, as you mentioned, Ron, was 1909 with those restrictions on it, because the idea was to prevent any kind of commercialization along that side of the block. In the meantime, that has been breached. And so there is precedent for changing zoning based on what development has actually occurred. So there is a precedent there for change. The second thing that I think is, and the other piece of the environment that we've got to keep in touch is that, as you all know, there's a campaign here for a historic district. And this will be seized upon, of course, and celebrated by anybody who is associated with that campaign. That's just a statement about the environment in which we're operating. The expectation is that application for a historic district is going to be put forward formally at any moment. And whatever else we do, we're going to have to contend with that going forward.
Libby, go ahead.
Yeah, what you just said, Carl.
Hold on a second. Ron, do we need to be staring at the screen? I think we'd be looking at each
Oh,
other. Can we do
no.
that? Thank you.
What Carl just said, and I think I've also heard this comment that the precedent is really important. And so if we know of other deeds that have been disregarded in this area, that certainly would help. So how do we find that out? I mean, if DEMPED is privy to this information, would they share it with us?
If the way this came to light is what is correct, that I would assume DEMPED was just making a title search on this property, since the expectation is that they're in a process that ultimately would transfer this property to some other entity that will develop it, that they weren't essentially doing title searches of all the property in the planning area, because the rest of the planning area is not DEMPED's. They don't care about it. I guess OP does not do that as a matter of course. I did a little bit of looking at Wells Fargo to see if there were similar restrictions on that property, and honestly, I don't know. I've never done that before, so I don't trust. I didn't find anything, but I don't trust that I was doing it right. Honestly, it's probably all very simple once you know how to navigate the websites, but it was daunting for me, frankly. But it's not impossible that similar restrictions are on a lot of the private property up and down the avenue. So
Right.
yes, it's something that we do need to figure out. If we're talking to these one or both of these zoning attorneys that people have reached out to, I think we'll open the door to be able to get answers to some of those questions. Carl, to your point, I've been thinking about it, about how this fits in with the historic district debate, and it's sort of interesting to me. It potentially puts them on the defensive, saying, is this the sort of thing that you want to preserve? Do you want to preserve this sort of exclusionary restriction on the users? Because remember, and this is what I was saying about what it restricts to. It doesn't restrict the height of a building, the mass of a building. You could build a hotel to the maximum allowable by zoning right next to those single family houses. You just can't build a structure that has apartment users in it. It's specific to the type of use, not to massing or FAR or height or anything like that. And granted, it's 1909 and, you know, there were building regulations, but there was no zoning.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a mystery to me.
Next is Maurice. Yeah, new.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to sort of reframe what I'm hearing and kind of also where, you know, how we can be productive given like our scope. And I sort of see our scope, and correct me if I'm wrong, our scope is sort of two ways. One, we're advising the ANC in matters of racial and social equity. And two, you know, we're communicating with the community about matters of racial and social equity. And so like none of us are going to understand, you know, the whole implications of actual title deeds from 100+ years ago. And we're not, you know, some of us are more experienced than others, but the point is that there is a process going on. And this all came about because of this potential surplusing of the one piece of land that is owned by the district and what to do with that. And there's obvious parts of the community that are very resistant to any sort of change that might involve building a, you know, housing on that property. And so they're using this as a potential mechanism or an excuse to stop, you know, throw sand in those gears. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure that we're focusing on where we actually can make a difference, which is providing the ANC sort of a view of, okay, here's, you know, where I think we can, you know, stand on firm ground, which is basically saying, even though this isn't explicitly saying you can't have blacks living on this property, that's in the effect what it was trying to do back then. And so therefore the ANC should, you know, do everything it can to say, you know, by using that as a reason to not go through this surplusing process is effectively just allowing that, you know, racist intention to stand. And then there's the other thing about messaging the community and whether it's, you know, coming up with a unified response as to, okay, you know, we understand there's some concern about that, and the people who know better are going to ask about it, but this is our opinion of it, and that it really, you know, shouldn't make a difference. And we, even though it explicitly doesn't say that this is a racial covenant, it in effect is, in our view, and so therefore it should be treated as such. So that's all I'm just throwing out there, is keeping us focused on sort of the way where we can actually make a difference about, one, advising the ANC, and two, communicating a message to the community.
I could not agree more.
Yep, agree, totally.
Okay, Clinton, I was gonna go next, but you can go next.
Oh no, I was just giving a thumbs up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Carl, you want to go before me?
I guess, again, two observations. One of them is we have to be careful. The racial intent was obvious in Newland's time, right? But it didn't have anything, I don't think, to do with apartment houses per se, because Newland owned 1,700 acres, I mean, through the Chevy Chase Land Company, 1,700 acres up and down Connecticut Avenue. And we know that there are a lot of apartment houses that were built on Connecticut Avenue. It's just that no blacks could live in them. But the apartment houses were there. So we're dealing with something that is a little bit more nuanced here. We're dealing with a stretch of the avenue that was supposed to be off limit to a certain kind of building. So we don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, I don't think. You know, we don't want to take this the wrong direction, and it will come back and bite us. And I just want to, but where we can go, and here's where I want to support Corinthea's point. We can refer people back to the small area plan. And we can refer people back to our position on that, which is that we accept and want to build on the recommendations of that plan, which clearly suggest, right, a multi-use unit being built on this land. And I think that's our strongest point. This was a process that unfolded over a long period of time. A lot of people, although people will say, oh, I didn't get a chance to participate, that's bullshit, basically, because people had a lot of chance to participate over a couple of years. And that's the point I think that we really need to make, that there is a plan. We worked on this. Here's what we want. We continue to want this.
I actually had, Carl, a take that I don't know if it's historically accurate on why he might have done this, and that is, I wonder, since he was transferring to the city rather than transferring to a private entity, that I wonder if they put the restriction on because it was not going to, it would no longer be under their control. Chevy Chase land, that they felt they needed the extra restriction to protect themselves. But again, that 1909, I have no idea. It's how power was apportioned among the entities. He didn't need covenants because he was selling those houses, and he knew who he was selling. He wasn't going to sell to people he didn't want living there.
No, the racial intent is clear. I mean, that's incontrovertible. It was it was a white enclave. It was created as a white enclave. That's not the point that I was making. The point I was making is that within that there were other designations, right? And I think that's what we're dealing with, a secondary designation beyond the fact that it was supposed to all be white.
Yeah. Well, I think that there are two things. One is, I think we can say the kind of thing that Maurice is saying, that sort of statement, and it's not just coming from our opinion because we're part of this committee, but this committee has done a deep dive into the history and the way these things were done over the past couple of years. And to Corinthia's point, regardless of the intent in 1909, it's exclusionary now. And we're not just about racial equity, we're about social equity, and everything everybody's been working toward, to your point, Carl, everything everybody's been working toward for several years now is for this neighborhood to become more inclusive, not maintain the exclusive practices that we have in the past.
Okay, so Maurice, you were sort of guiding us towards what action might we take that would serve. Do we have anything concrete we can do? I'm not directing that just to you, but to anybody. Libby, did your hand go up, or is that just?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying from the last, I don't think we necessarily used it, but we worked recently on putting together was it like a 2-page document, Ron?
Right.
And we could all work together on a document again and advise the ANC, as Maurice was saying. Or that's one thing. I mean, that's one thing. I think we have to, like you said, come out with a statement. I wish we could have someone present history of the neighborhood that would be compelling and people would want to come and learn about it. I think then they would get a better feel for the research, what the housing report was based on, what we're trying to get beyond. If they were hearing firsthand But again, I know as Ron says, those people aren't the ones who are going to come to the meeting.
Would you guys? There's one more thing that, if I can find it, I'd sort of like to share maybe.
While you're looking for it, can I just add?
Yeah,
that,
go on.
if you know, we have a website, Historic Chevy Chase DC, that has some really good information. I want to, make a commercial for. If you go and look at my house history, for instance, you'll learn a lot about the neighborhood and how the early Citizens Association of Chevy Chase DC, as it was then called, from 1909 forward, how it all worked.
Carl, would you ever see yourself give a presentation? I'd hate to put you right on the spot, but I mean, you are so knowledgeable, and I feel like we need somebody who really has the command of the information to present to the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do. Of
Could that
course,
be part of an ANC meeting? I mean, could we have that on part of the
well, this is actually another agenda item, and this actually connects with the item I wanted to put on the agenda.
Before we get to,
So I'm not saying anything about it now. We'll get to that, I guess, right?
If I could, let me just share the screen again for just a second. Because those of you who maybe weren't part of this, can you see this, the Task Force on Racism
Yes.
thing?
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. This is now, 2.5 years ago. And, we went through this whole thing, demographics, why we're here, acknowledging our history, and the kind of laws and covenants that there were, including this sort of restriction, how it still issues today, and all the reasons why we're concerned about this, what sort of steps that starts out, recommendation number 1, which is to do what we're talking about, what became known as the Civic Core, and IZ and the rest of it, affordability.
the presentation's
have-
there.
Huh?
The
Yeah.
presentation is there.
Mm-hmm.
is this, what form is this in? Can you send it to the list?
PowerPoint.
Sure. It looks like it's a PowerPoint, and if it's, I'll either send it or, and it had a whole script to it. This was just, and Sarah Reams, who's a member of the committee at that time, she was the one who did most of the providing the background, especially the historical stuff. And, the ANC, basically, with the exception of this gentle density number 5, the missing middle, which will be next year's battle. Everything else they were, they approved. So
Kind of, sorta, because mostly what they did was they punted that approval to the next ANC, and the next ANC asked us to study most of these things. So they didn't actually say, yes, we make a resolution that says we stand behind these things.
yeah, I mean,
So that
Yes.
never got done, actually.
yeah.
A piece of unfinished business between us and between the task force and the ANC.
In terms of action, Corinthia and Libby, are you guys going to attend this zoning meeting on
Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah.
This is going to come up, and I think that I don't think you need to make the case. It's like in a trial, but I think to just note that that the Raise Committee has discussed it, and that we are all very concerned, and we'll be putting out some sort of position paper on it if it's going to remain out there, but it does fit right in with the history that we're all trying to reverse, and just leave it out there. I mean, my worry here strategically is just people picking up on this opportunity to throw a monkey wrench into the works for their own goals, and it is a monkey wrench that I don't think anybody should be touching.
Yeah, I agree. And so how many are going to be at that meeting? I know I'm going to be there.
I think we should, I mean, whoever wants to go can go, I would think.
Well, I know that Lisa sent an email to those of us who in the last meeting specifically said we wanted to engage with that committee, which I think was Carl and Libby and myself.
My,
Yeah, did you say you were interested? I can't remember. I think
I'm
Maria said she maybe was.
I'm interested, but I'm also signed up for the Washington History Conference opening event at that time.
Well, these meetings are not very well, not this meeting. This meeting's wonderful. The zoning committee meetings are not very well managed, and all the passionate listserv residents, all our best friends, are there screaming, and so there's not a lot of opportunity to get involved in a dialogue about anything, but I think there will be an opportunity to at least point out that it's an issue.
Is it a webinar or, I mean?
It's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be in person at Lafayette Pointer's Rec Center, I think, and they're going to try and Zoom it. But these people are, let's just say, they are several notches below Maurice on the IT scale. They're even several notches below me on the IT scale. And I tried to get on this Zoom at 6 o'clock. So
You weren't the only one.
Even though the meeting was at 7.
I found out. But anyway, so I suspect it won't be smooth. And there's some bomb throwers that are on the committee, and the chair lets anybody sort of sit in and act like they're part of the committee. So it's an awkward situation.
Who is the chair?
Peter Goslin,
Hmm.
co-chaired by Peter Lynch. And on this issue, like I said, Peter is not in a bad place on it.
Which Peter?
Goslin. He called me, and he agrees that it's better to just figure out how to get rid of this and not deal with it, and understanding that there are going to be people who want to, pick up the monkey wrench.
Yeah.
Well, I'm honestly not above explicitly saying that this is racist, even though it's not worded that way in the deed. But I'd like to see the actual deed, because this is just, for me, this is all hearsay.
Well,
whatever's in the deed, it's going to be argued, right? So that's not the issue. The issue is who's going to win the battle of public opinion here. And I think we are on strong ground. It's the small area plan, and it's the values behind the small area plan that have to carry here. And that should be pretty easy to defend, it seems to me.
Yep.
With that, I
It
think
is.
Hold on, Cynthia.
I was gonna say with that, I think I'll try and work and draft something up and send it out to the group. How soon will these will the recording be available? I was not taking specific notes from what Maurice said and what Carl said.
Well,
Um,
the way I recorded it to the cloud and it's going into Lisa's account. So when she can make it available, I guess we can try to get her to put it out. I mean, the recording is actually available within an hour or two after the meeting ends, but getting at it is a different story. I guess I could have recorded it to my computer, but I didn't this time.
Corinthia, I've been taking notes. We can talk at least.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you
what
want to,
the-
if you just want to fill in facts on this, you know, I'm actually fairly available tomorrow. You know, so you can just email me and I'll get back to you. I'm mainly just sitting at this computer all day.
You may even be able to pull stuff from the PowerPoint that Ron's going to send around that we used in 2020. I was going to say something else and I forgot it.
Well, if I could, while you're remembering it, you know, Carl, I would just respond to Carl is that, you know, this zoning committee is really sometimes the Wild West, and there are people who will jump all over a reference to the small area plan, despite the fact that it's approved by the ANC, approved by the city council, and everyone in the world has had a chance to talk about it for several years now. They will tell you it's a sham and it's of no consequence, and they don't have to, it was something that was somehow forced on them.
And yeah, and that we need another survey. So I remember what I was going to say, that I think we'll have a better idea of how to position ourselves after that meeting, actually. I mean, I think it'd be great to do something in time for that meeting, but I think we'll have a great understanding of what we are dealing with in the flesh, so to speak, once we go to that meeting, because at least 3 of us are going. 2 of us are going. I don't remember who else is going. But
I'll try to take notes.
Corinthia, I signed up for the web. I'll try to go in person, but it just really depends on how Cairo is.
For those of you who are attending the meeting, just be aware that Lisa had sold our participation in this committee as bringing a focus on Black homeownership to the discussion. She's, you know, I think she knows that there are other issues that we might want to weigh in on, but that's how she has sold our involvement.
okay, thanks. That's useful to know.
Mhm.
All right. So my suggestion is that if we do this write up and we have something in time for the meeting, that's good. And then after the meeting, we can sort of communicate through our email list, our email group, about what we should do in terms of further actions, because I think there's more for us to do. But like I said, I think once we see the mess in this meeting, I hope that it will be messy enough that we'll see it. Although it sounds like we have no doubt that'll happen. But I'd like to move on to the next agenda item if we can. Oh, actually, there is one thing, Ron, you didn't comment on the 24-page amendment. Is that relevant to us? And is that business of this committee to look at that and deal with that?
You know, I haven't attended all of the webinars and the other information sessions relative to the city's commitment to looking at virtually all decisions through a racial equity lens. So I'm not exactly sure how that is supposed to work, but this would be a new zone for the city that should probably be looked at to see if it you know, if it passes the tests of racial and social equity. So the answer, I think the general answer would be sure. We should definitely look at it. if you want a more subjective and detailed answer, is that if you like the small area plan, then you'll like what's in the zoning code, because all it is a sort of technical document to say how do you go about doing buildings that fit in the neighborhood. Okay, it's really not more complicated. That is very complicated, but from, I think, the Raise Committee point of view, it really there's not much to look at, frankly.
All right, thanks.
Unless the Raise Committee wants to weigh in on whether 50% of the building above the first floor should be glass or non-glass. I'm not sure that we really have a unified position on that. Carl might, but
I might. Anyway, thanks, Ron. So the next thing is just a mention of that meeting on Thursday at the Lafayette Rec Center. It's at 6 o'clock. And one of the members of the committee has to leave at 6:45. I think they're going to try to front load this with as much as they can. So I don't know how long the meetings actually go. Do you know, Ron?
I mean, we've only had one, well, we've had two. One was the introductory, and, you know, it went on for about an hour and a half. The committee has done nothing substantively. We've split into small working groups that have done a little bit, but not much. And that's about it.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Before you, Maurice, do you have to go or are you sticking around? I wanted to, there was an item that I mentioned it in the opening, but I didn't write into the agenda that I put on the chat about co-chair. Lisa has asked, she's overwhelmed, and I asked if there's anything that I can do to help. She said, yes, would you run this meeting tonight and also find out if we could get somebody to co-chair with her so they could take over some of the organizing of the meetings. And she mentioned Libby and you and me. And Maurice, are you interested in this at all?
I don't have the bandwidth.
All right, I'll raise the question again to the group after Carl does his agenda item, which is next. All right.
All right, I got to run. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Maurice.
All right, see you next time. See you around the neighborhood.
Take care.
All right, Carl, you're up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so I just wanted to give you an update on how HCCDC is and its project group on Black Broad Branch is developing, because I had brought to your attention before the desire for us to run a program with you, that is with the ANC, which this committee will clearly be involved in some way, right? To create an encounter between the descendants of Black Broad Branch. Let me make a slight digression at the top to say that we're so used to thinking of Pointer and his descendants that we have mistakenly not included some of the other Black residents that were also there and also displaced. So the Shorter Dorsey family, for instance, was also displaced at the time. And it's really important that this is something that is not just about one family and its descendants. It's about a community that was displaced. There were more than one family. An interesting thing, second digression, is that there was another connection through George Washington and his enslaved people through the Dorsey Shorter side. So the slavery relationship goes back not only to Pointer on that side, but to the Shorter Dorseys as well. So that's just another historical factum for you to think about. In any event, here's what we've been doing. In a project with the University of District of Columbia, we got a new generation of oral historians, so to speak, to do the interviews for the descendants. We have 8 descendant interviews. They were done by students and the outcome was not as great as we had hoped. Let's put it that way. So we were looking for ways of using, looking for an avenue or a platform that we can create that would make accessible what the descendants said without making them read, without making people read interviews that are in some cases indecipherable, right? So that's what we've been working on for the last few months. And we've come up with a plan, and we're about 3/4 of the way through the plan. How we were creating is a set of profiles based on the interviews with some additional information. We're calling them vignettes or profiles. So each of the descendants, 8 of them, will have one of these. And that's what we'll put up on the website to support the encounter that we would like to have co-sponsored with the ANC, right? And my update is simply to tell you that that process is now about 3/4 finished. We expect to finish the vignettes in the next week or 10 days. And we expect to put them on our website in a demo form in the 2 or 3 weeks after that. And at that point, we will be ready to run some kind of program with you. And we want to do this before summer, because summer is obviously a time when fewer people are paying attention. And we know the time is getting short, so we wanted to make sure that this is on the ANC's agenda. And that's the major ask that I have of you all today, to make sure that we get this on the ANC's agenda so that we can do it either in late May or early June is the target date that we figure.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, this ties in exactly with the idea of ways to inform the community about the history so that they will look outside of the box.
Yeah, I mean, ask me other questions that occur to you that you might have. I mean, I could talk about formatting ideas that we have at the moment for that if you're interested. I'm not going to say more unless there's an interest.
Cynthia, I'm interested. So what do we need to do? Do we need to send like a something to the ANC saying that we would like to put this on with you, or I'm just asking, how can we move the points?
Yeah,
move it across.
Yeah, sort of a memo at this point might be a very useful thing. I mean, the first thing we have to do, I understand why Lisa's not here, but I was hoping that she would be, because I definitely wanted her to hear this, since she's our, buckle to the ANC, and through her we need to inform the rest of the ANC that if we're all on board with this and it's something we want to do, this committee wants to do, and it's important for us to do that, then we need to communicate that, and the ANC needs to be informed of it.
I'll work on writing something.
Do we need to like vote on it? Because I heard Charles say if everybody wants to do it, like, should we vote on it for a quorum? I think we have 7 of 11 people.
Cal's in charge of consensus.
Yes.
Okay.
So, so what are we actually trying to decide here? I'm not clear. What do we need to decide about?
I can articulate it. I think it's to co-sponsor, for the ANC to co-sponsor an event with HCCDC, to organize, and that event would be an encounter between the descendants of Black Broad Branch with our community.
This would be an in-person event where they come
before the summer.
This would be an in-person event where they come from wherever they live.
No, it would be an online event because
Okay.
we
Right.
want to maximize the participation, and we can only do that, I think, through online means.
All right. So the is there any discussion or questions about this before we decide?
Great.
Just a quick question, Carl. So the calendar would be with the descendants from the Broad Branch area. And how would you present it? It would be just open to the community?
Yeah, I mean, anybody could participate who wants. And we would, part of this would be a serious effort on our part to turn people out for it because we think it's important.
Sure.
It's an important topic. As far as the format is concerned, I think your question went to the format to some degree. The format would be hybrid. In order to get the descendants who are not professional public speakers to feel as comfortable as possible while talking about very sensitive topics in many respects, we would probably pre-record something at about a half an hour with about 3, 4, 5 of these descendants with a qualified moderator. We're looking into who would be best for that at the moment. And then we would run that. There would be an introduction. We would run that, and then there'd be a kind of Q&A with the descendants. And that's what we're thinking now.
So the community participation would be the Q&A.
The direct back and forth. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
This is making me think a bit of what Marilee's organization did, and I thought it was great. They had they interviewed Marilee. You can tell about it. The presentation by
Andrew Billingsley. Andrew Billingsley, yeah. We had another Zoom presentation today by Tony Richardson of the Rock Creek Conservancy and the history of Carter Barron Amphitheater. It was great, and we try to gather disparate, community members, neighbors. We're into neighbors, and then we listen to it together and we discuss afterwards. It's a nice format. It's a really nice format. We use a room at Iona Senior Services.
Right. So you had people there in person. It was hybrid, like
Right.
Carl's talking about, and you had his daughter,
Yes.
the adult daughter, there, mapped in from her state. I don't remember where she was.
She was in Chicago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a really nice hybrid program. It does work. And we have this camera. It's called an Owl that we just actually got it. And it like we would all be in you see the panoramic view of people in the actual room. So it feels more like we're together with the group. It works.
Yeah, and he was on a big screen.
Yes,
So
we
how
had a big screen to observe in it. We call it a watch party, and then a lot of other people are just are zooming in. And then we can all do questions through the chat. I think that's what you're referring to, right, Libby? Yeah.
Yep.
Early, did you record it?
Yes. Recorded. It's on our website, or I could send, yes, we've recorded both of those, the one today and the one with Billingsley.
Can you send around a link? I'd love to see it.
Sure, yeah,
There's a whole bunch of recorded stuff on their website.
yeah.
Tons of stuff about all kinds of different topics.
Mhm.
Anything else before we decide?
Well, I think we should urge the ANC to support it, aggressively and
Yeah.
put it on the calendar and do whatever needed. Sounds great.
So the question on the table is, should we co-sponsor this with Historic Chevy Chase DC? So in Corinthia, you haven't, since you're not on camera, you can either do this verbally or you can put your camera on for a second. And Marilee, you haven't seen this process before. So please indicate your alignment with this proposal by putting a thumb up if you're aligned, putting a thumb down if you're not, putting a thumb sideways if you either have an issue or want to abstain. Great. And Maria, there we go. What's yours, Ron?
Thumbs up.
Everybody was thumbs up? Okay, great. All right, we have a unanimous thumbs up.
Thank you.
So decided, so it shall be. Anything else, Carl, before we move on?
No, that was all. Thanks.
All right.
I'm sorry, I
Um,
have to duck out now.
Okay, well, you already know, we already know your answer to this next question about the co-chair. All right. See you, Lisa. I mean, Libby, my brain is fried.
L person.
Okay. So Lisa feels, I've had a sense that she was overwhelmed, and, you know, now that she's the chair of the ANC, she was pretty overloaded when she was just a commissioner and a member of this committee, the chair of this committee. But now she's on the other committee, and she's also the chair of the whole ANC, and she's dealing with, you know, lack of alignment within the ANC itself, lack of alignment within the ZDC, ZDD. And so she feels like she does not have the bandwidth to organize these meetings, these monthly meetings. So she's asking for a co-chair. She wanted to know if I or Libby or Maurice wants to do it. I'm willing to do it. And Libby had the idea that we might, if we didn't find one person, we might just spread it out between 2 or 3 people and, you know, alternate or take turns. It involves basically the stuff that Lisa does, you know, putting out the notice, putting out the Zoom link, coming up with an agenda, and then either running the meeting or asking somebody to run the meeting. So, and Renee is here.
Is Libby willing to do it?
Well, Libby is not willing to do it. She feels like she's overloaded, but she came up with the idea of the rotation.
Mhm.
So, what I want to ask, is there anybody here who wants to do it? You co-chair with Lisa. Sometimes she'd be able to do it, but probably you would do more of the work towards this than she does. It's not a lot of work, but it has to be done.
I feel like
Okay.
I'm too much of a beginner. I'm trying to, you know, figure this out. I just don't think I'm ready to do that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll talk to Libby about rotating and splitting it, and then if the 2 of us take it on, then we can spread it out to more people as people get the hang of it. And because, you know, I'm always in favor of distributing power wherever possible. And distributing responsibility too. Okay, anything else that you want to talk about in this meeting? Renee, welcome. We're just wrapping up. So the question I asked was, we're looking for somebody to be co-chair with Lisa because Lisa's overloaded. Renee, if you're interested, let me know and we can have a chat about that, or you can stay on afterwards and we can chat about that. Anything else before we adjourn?
Okay, good.
I want to find that deed. I want us to find that deed. I want to
Well, if it surfaces tomorrow sometime, or if any information about finding it surfaces, I'll share it with you, Cal.
Great, thank you. All right, well, pretty good meeting, I
right.
thought, an hour and 20 minutes. And Renee, if you want to talk about co-chair, you can stay behind, otherwise we'll just end the meeting. See you
All right.
all. See some of
Thank
you.
you,
on
everybody.
evening.
See some of you on
Thanks.
Thursday.
All righty, see you then.
See you, everyone.